The Empire's overconfidence. The Galactic Empire was known across the universe for its power. It had conquered hundreds of worlds, defeated many enemies, and ruled with an iron fist. Its fleets of enormous warships, filled with the best soldiers and the most advanced technology, made the Empire unstoppable. No one had ever dared to challenge them. Every planet they visited fell under their control without much of a fight. The Empire had made a name for itself as the most powerful force in the galaxy, and its commanders were confident in their victory. But that confidence would soon be shaken. It all began with a mission to a small, uncharted planet. It was a simple task: send a few ships to scout the area, gather some information, and report back. No one thought this mission would be anything more than routine. The Empire's fleet, a massive collection of warships, cruisers, and support vessels, was ready for anything. The Empire had already crushed larger forces, and this small world, known as Earth, seemed insignificant. There was nothing to suggest this mission would be different from the others. Commander Roland, one of the Empire's most respected leaders, stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the stars streak by as the fleet made its way toward Earth. He was a tall, sharp-eyed man, always sure of his decisions. His confidence was legendary. He had led his troops into countless battles, and each time, the outcome was the same: victory for the Empire. As far as he was concerned, this mission would be no different. Approaching Earth, Commander, a voice called out from the communication station. Roland gave a nod but didn't react with much emotion. He had been in situations like this many times. Prepare for landing, but stay alert, he ordered. As the ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, the first signs of life on the planet were visible. The human cities looked primitive, small, and unimportant. Roland wasn't impressed. There were no signs of advanced military presence, no fleets in the sky, no signs of resistance. It seemed like the humans were unaware of the Empire's arrival, or at least, they were not prepared for it. It was then that something strange happened. Just before the fleet made its final descent, a message appeared on every communication screen across the fleet. It was short, simple, and it froze everyone in place. One morning, run for your life. The message was repeated several times. It was in the same language as the Empire's communications, yet there was something odd about it. It wasn't a military message, nor was it a threat from any known enemy. It wasn't signed by any military command, and there was no indication of who had sent it. Run for your life. Roland scoffed. Who dares send us such a childish message? His officers exchanged confused glances, unsure how to respond. Commander, should we investigate this further? One of them asked. Roland stared at the screen. The words repeated, run for your life. And he felt an unsettling feeling in his gut, but he quickly shook it off. It was just a warning from some misguided human. They had no idea what they were up against. Ignore it, Roland said firmly. It's just some scared fool trying to get attention. We are the Empire. Nothing will stand in our way. The fleet continued its descent toward the planet. Roland gave the order to land, and his soldiers prepared for what they thought would be another easy victory. They had fought enemies that were far stronger than anything Earth could offer. There was no reason to think this would be any different. The human race was primitive. They could not challenge the Empire. As the ships touched down on Earth's surface, the soldiers quickly deployed. They were met with a quiet, seemingly peaceful landscape. The cities appeared deserted, and no one seemed to be around. The Earthlings must have been terrified of the Empire's arrival. But Roland knew they had no choice but to surrender when the Empire showed up at their door. Still, something nagged at him. A strange feeling in the pit of his stomach told him this wasn't going to be as easy as he had thought. But Roland pushed that thought aside. He had seen this before. The first sign of fear from an enemy was always the same, and when the Empire showed up, the fear turned into surrender. The Empire's soldiers moved in with confidence. They searched the cities, but there was no sign of resistance. It was almost too quiet. The message they had received kept echoing in Roland's mind, but he refused to let it distract him. Run for your life. What did it mean? Who could possibly stand in the way of the Empire? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the quiet city streets. The ground shook beneath their feet. Roland and his troops stopped in their tracks, their eyes darting to the source of the sound. In the distance, smoke rose from a building that had just been destroyed. The humans had launched an attack. But how? Roland's hand instinctively went to his weapon. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. This was no ordinary attack. The humans had somehow managed to strike at the heart of their fleet, and they had done it in a way no one expected. How could these primitive people have such powerful weapons? The moment the attack began, Roland realized that the human message wasn't a joke. It wasn't a prank. The humans had known something the Empire hadn't understood until now. This wasn't just another easy mission. This was a warning, one that the Empire was about to learn the hard way. And so, the first seeds of doubt were planted in Roland's mind. Could humanity be more than the Empire thought? Could they actually stand a chance against the might of the Empire? As the battle raged on, the message "run for your life" would soon come to haunt them all. The first encounter. The Empire's commanders were in disbelief. After the first surprise attack, they quickly regrouped to retaliate. But as they did, something strange began to happen. The human forces, though smaller and seemingly outmatched, began to show an unexpected level of skill and coordination. It wasn't just brute force. They were using clever tactics, hitting the Empire's ships in weak spots and striking where the Empire least expected it. Commander Roland watched from his flagship's bridge, his eyes narrowing as he saw human ships darting between the Empire's warships, seemingly avoiding every trap. The human fighters, although less advanced in technology, had an uncanny ability to predict and dodge attacks, as if they were always one step ahead. How is this possible? Roland muttered under his breath, gripping the armrests of his command chair. They're just humans. How could they be so organized? His officers shared his confusion. The humans had no massive fleets, no advanced weaponry to compare with the Empire's massive laser cannons and automated defense systems. Yet, they were holding their ground. In fact, they were winning. One of the smaller human vessels, a seemingly insignificant fighter, launched a well-placed missile at one of the Empire's destroyers. The missile struck the shield generator, disabling the ship's defenses. Before the Empire ship could recover, another missile followed, this time directly hitting the power core. The destroyer exploded in a brilliant flash of light, sending shockwaves through the fleet. It was a clean shot, and the Empire hadn't seen it coming. Roland felt a chill run down his spine. This was no ordinary enemy. Humanity was more dangerous than they had thought. Their tactics weren't random. They were calculated. They weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. "Commander," one of the officers shouted, his voice filled with panic. "The fleet is being overwhelmed. We've lost contact with the southern wing, and the eastern flank is retreating." Roland's mind raced. He had to act fast. If the humans were allowed to keep fighting at this level, the Empire would lose. The most powerful military in the galaxy was being driven back by these humans. "Pull back," he ordered. "We need to regroup and rethink our strategy. Prepare for full retreat." But even as he gave the command, something unexpected happened. The human fighters didn't stop. Instead of letting up, they pressed the attack harder. Roland had expected them to retreat once they saw the Empire's ships pulling back. But no, the humans weren't afraid. They were relentless. It was like they had no intention of stopping until every last one of the Empire's ships was destroyed. "All units, regroup," Roland shouted, but the humans were already right on top of them. The Empire's ships were beginning to turn and flee, but it was clear this battle had been lost. One human ship, piloted by a commander known as Captain Kira, locked onto Roland's flagship. Her ship, a modified transport vessel, moved with incredible speed and agility, dodging lasers and gunfire, as if it were a dancer in a deadly ballet. The humans had no heavy artillery or massive fleets, but they had something the Empire hadn't considered: heart. Captain Kira's ship shot past Roland's flagship, dropping a series of bombs that caused massive damage to the Empire's command center. The flagship rocked violently, throwing Roland and his officers off balance. "Report," Roland demanded, his voice shaking. "Shields are down to 30%. We've taken significant damage to the forward hull. Engines are still functional, but we are vulnerable," his chief engineer replied. Roland's hands clenched into fists. They were losing. A single small group of humans was holding their own against the Empire's greatest fleet. The arrogance of the Empire, once thought unshakable, was now in danger of crumbling. But there was more. As the battle continued, Roland received another transmission, a message that struck him with a cold chill. It was the same message they had received earlier, but now it was being broadcasted across every communication channel. "Run for your life." It was clear now. Humanity was not simply defending its planet. They were sending a message, a warning to the Empire, and with each passing minute, it became more and more clear that this warning was not to be ignored. This part continues to build on the suspense and introduces the idea that humanity's strength lies not in their technology, but in their adaptability, resilience, and strategy. It's a key turning point in the story as the Empire realizes they are in trouble. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. The human resilience revealed. As the battle raged on, Commander Roland's pride and confidence in the Empire's might began to erode. His fleet, once unstoppable, was now battered and retreating. Every ship that attempted to escape was hunted down by the relentless humans. Roland could not deny it anymore. The humans were more than just a primitive race. They were a force to be reckoned with. Back on the command station, Roland's mind raced. His officers were scrambling to find a solution, but it was becoming clear that the Empire's usual tactics weren't working. Despite having superior numbers and technology, the humans seemed to have an answer for everything. Their strategy was unlike anything the Empire had faced before. Every ship, every human fighter seemed to know exactly where to strike, exactly when to strike. Roland knew that a desperate change was needed. He ordered a full retreat, pulling the remaining ships back to regroup and repair. But the humans wouldn't let up. They pursued the retreating fleet, picking off smaller vessels one by one. There was something in the humans' eyes, an unyielding determination that the Empire could not understand. Every time one of their ships was destroyed, another would immediately take its place. They kept fighting, as though they couldn't be stopped. Then, just when Roland thought they might be safe, a devastating attack caught him off guard. The humans, once thought to be weak, had planted explosives across the Empire's remaining supply bases. With incredible speed, they sabotaged crucial systems that powered the fleet, making the Empire's ships useless. Roland watched in horror as one of his flagship's engines failed, followed by the communications array going dark. The human forces were everywhere, systematically taking apart the Empire's infrastructure, leaving them helpless. "Commander, we're being overwhelmed," one of the officers screamed. Roland's hands trembled as he reached for the communication console. He needed to contact the higher council, but the signals were jammed. The humans had disabled their communication systems, leaving them isolated and vulnerable. "How are they doing this?" Roland muttered, his voice thick with disbelief. "They don't have the resources we do. They shouldn't be able to fight like this." A high-ranking officer, Captain Vera, approached him with a grim expression. "Sir, we have underestimated them. Their resilience is beyond anything we've encountered. We have fought enemies with superior technology before, but humanity, they fight with something else, something we didn't account for." Roland looked out at the battlefield, his mind spinning. He had seen battle after battle, fought against some of the most powerful civilizations the galaxy had ever known, but nothing had prepared him for this. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting to protect their home. They weren't afraid to die, and that made them more dangerous than anything the Empire had ever faced. Roland had spent years studying the tactics of the Empire's greatest enemies, learning how to anticipate their moves, how to crush them before they could strike. But this was different. The humans fought with an unwavering tenacity, adapting to every situation, learning from their mistakes. They didn't retreat. They didn't beg for mercy. They kept going. Every time the Empire thought they had them cornered, the humans found a way to turn the tables. A memory flashed in Roland's mind, an old saying that was passed down through the Empire's ranks. Never underestimate the will of the weak. He had always thought it was a meaningless phrase, used only to inspire the lower-ranked soldiers. But now, as he watched the human forces continue their relentless assault, he realized how wrong he had been. "This is it," Roland said softly, as the realization hit him. The humans, they're not just fighting a war. They're fighting for something bigger than that. They're fighting for their future, and they'll never stop. Captain Vera's face tightened with fear. "Then we are in danger, Commander. If they won't stop, if they keep fighting like this, there's no way the Empire can win." The more Roland thought about it, the more he realized that the Empire's old ways, its old arrogance, could no longer keep them safe. This fight was not just about technology, weapons, or power. It was about the unbreakable will of the human race. And for the first time, the mighty Empire was starting to understand what it truly meant to face an opponent that refused to give up. The humans weren't just defending their planet. They were teaching the Empire a painful lesson, one that would change the course of the galaxy forever. The Empire's fear grows. The Empire, once confident and unchallenged, now found itself on the back foot. As the human forces continued to strike with unrelenting precision, the higher command on the Imperial flagship grew more desperate by the hour. Their fleet had been scattered, their resources depleted, and their morale shattered. This was no longer a simple battle for dominance. This was a struggle for survival. Back at the Imperial Command Center, Commander Roland paced back and forth, his mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. He had led countless battles, defeated more enemies than he could count, but now he felt helpless. Each time the humans seemed cornered, they found a way to escape, to outsmart the Empire's best efforts. It wasn't just their technology or tactics that surprised Roland. It was their spirit. The humans fought not only with weapons but with a raw, undying determination that the Empire had never seen before. Roland looked at his officers, who seemed as lost as he was. The calm, commanding presence he had once relied on now felt empty, as if all the authority he once had been stripped away. He stared at the holomap of the galaxy, where the human forces were beginning to take back control of more planets, more systems, one after another. It was happening too fast for the Empire to counter. They were losing. "We can't keep retreating like this," Captain Vera said, her voice tight with frustration. "We need reinforcements. We need to strike back, and we need to do it now." Roland's fingers tightened into fists. He wanted to believe that the Empire could still pull this off, that they could turn the tide with enough firepower and strategy. But deep down, he knew it was too late. The humans weren't running. They weren't afraid. And that terrified him more than any weapon the Empire could throw at them. Suddenly, the communication console lit up with another message from the humans. Roland's heart sank as the words flashed across the screen. "Run for your life." This time, the message felt different. It was no longer a warning. It was a declaration. The Empire wasn't just losing a battle. They were losing a war. The humans weren't merely defending themselves. They were systematically dismantling everything the Empire had built. Every fleet, every base, every advantage the Empire once held seemed to be slipping through their fingers, taken over by these seemingly helpless humans. The message was loud and clear. The Empire's time was running out. Roland sat down in his chair, his head in his hands. The weight of defeat pressed down on him. We've underestimated them all along," he murmured to himself. The same overconfidence that had once led the Empire to victory was now the very thing that would destroy it. They had believed the humans were weak, just another species to be conquered. But instead, humanity was proving to be a force far stronger than any of them could have imagined. His mind flashed to the early days of the conflict, to the arrogance with which they had dismissed the humans' warning. Now, as their fleet dwindled and the humans closed in on their last strongholds, Roland understood the true meaning of that message. It had not been a plea for mercy. It had been a warning of what was to come. The human forces had a power the Empire had never faced before, an unwavering will to survive, a refusal to surrender. The Empire had known how to crush an enemy who cowered before it, but these humans, they had no fear, and that made them unstoppable. Roland turned to his officers, his voice barely a whisper. "It's too late," he said, his tone tinged with defeat. "The Empire, it's over." Captain Vera's face was grim. "What do we do now, Commander? Do we surrender?" Roland shook his head. "We can't. If we surrender, we lose everything. But we also can't keep fighting. The humans won't stop. Not now." The ship's systems buzzed as the alert lights blinked in a pattern Roland recognized too well. A full-scale retreat was imminent. The remaining fleets were already on the move, headed for the Empire's last safe system. But even that would not be enough. The humans would follow them. They would never stop until every last member of the Empire was wiped from the galaxy. "Prepare for the final retreat," Roland ordered, his voice heavy with regret. "We'll gather what's left of the fleet and escape to the outer systems. It's the only chance we have." But deep down, Roland knew it was futile. No matter how far they ran, the humans would follow. There was nowhere left to hide. The day the Empire learned to fear humanity had come, and the consequences would haunt them forever. Humanity strikes back. With every passing day, the Empire's situation grew more desperate. Their once dominant forces were in disarray, their commanders defeated by humanity's surprising strength and resolve. The retreating Empire fleet struggled to hold together, and their desperation began to show. The human forces, far smaller in number but infinitely more determined, had turned the tide of the war. They had taken back world after world, with each victory emboldening their resolve. Commander Roland, now on the defensive, watched in horror as the humans continued to press their attack, forcing the Empire's remaining forces into an ever-shrinking perimeter. He couldn't believe how quickly everything had unraveled. Every attempt to strike back seemed to only escalate the situation further, pushing humanity to fight harder and smarter. It wasn't just their courage that was a threat anymore, it was their strategy. The humans had begun to adapt at an unprecedented rate, understanding the Empire's tactics and countering them with ingenuity. Their forces had learned to disable Imperial ships with precision, hacking into their technology, sabotaging their weapons, and using the Empire's own advanced systems against them. The humans weren't just fighting with brute force anymore. They were fighting with their minds, and that made them more dangerous than any weapon the Empire could create. On a small human warship, Captain Kira and her team of fighters prepared for their next mission. They were going to strike at the heart of the Empire once again, this time targeting an Imperial supply base that had been critical to the Empire's efforts. It was a daring move, but Kira knew there was no other choice. If the humans were to win this war, they needed to cripple the Empire's ability to fight back for good. "We've taken out their communications," Kira said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "Now it's time to take out their supply lines. They won't be able to keep fighting without their resources." Her crew, loyal and battle-hardened, nodded in agreement. They had already lost too much, but they had also gained something far more valuable: hope. The hope that they could defeat the Empire. The hope that their world, their people, would survive this war. It was this hope that fueled every strike, every victory, and kept them moving forward even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the small fleet of human ships sped toward the Imperial base, the Empire was already beginning to feel the pressure. Their supply lines were stretched thin, and they were running out of options. The once unshakable empire was now struggling to maintain its dominance. On the command station of the supply base, Imperial officers were blindsided by the sudden appearance of the human fleet. They had not expected an attack so soon, and the small human vessels moved faster than anyone had anticipated. It wasn't just their technology, it was their courage. These humans didn't hesitate. They struck quickly, without warning, and without mercy. Shields are failing. We've lost power to the main reactors. An officer shouted. The Empire's fleet, already on the brink of collapse, began to crumble under the relentless assault. The human ships, using tactics the Empire had never seen before, moved in and out of the shadows, striking at key locations with precision. The Empire's weapons, once capable of destroying entire planets, now seemed ineffective against the humans' constant hit-and-run attacks. Meanwhile, Commander Roland's flagship was in chaos. He had lost communication with several of his key fleets, and reports flooded in of widespread damage. The supply base was destroyed, and the remaining Imperial ships were now stranded in hostile territory, surrounded by humanity's growing forces. His options were running out. The message from the humans echoed in his mind once again. Run for your life. Roland knew it wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a truth. The Empire couldn't keep running. The human forces were everywhere, closing in on all fronts. Every time the Empire tried to regroup, the humans struck harder, faster, and with more precision. They weren't just fighting for their survival anymore. They were fighting for the survival of their species. And they weren't going to stop until every last one of the Empire's forces was wiped out. Roland's officers watched in horror as human ships disabled the last of the Empire's remaining battle cruisers, forcing them to surrender or face complete annihilation. There was no escape now. The Empire had no more tricks left. The humans had completely outmaneuvered them, using their resilience and ingenuity to dismantle everything the Empire had once believed to be invincible. In that moment, Roland understood. The humans had won, not because of their weapons or their numbers, but because of their unbreakable will. The Empire's greatest mistake had been underestimating them. They had thought the humans would fall before their might, but instead, humanity had risen. And now, it was the Empire that was on the verge of destruction. The Empire's desperate decision. As the Empire's grip on the galaxy slipped further, the reality of their impending collapse became undeniable. Once mighty fleets lay in ruins, key supply lines were destroyed, and the remaining Imperial forces were scattered and demoralized. Commander Roland and his officers, trapped in the heart of the Empire's shattered defense network, faced a devastating truth. There was no victory in sight. Their enemies, the humans, had proven themselves far stronger and far more capable than anyone had ever anticipated. The situation was growing dire. With every passing hour, humanity's influence spread further. More worlds fell under their control, and the Empire's once stronghold planets were now in danger of being overtaken. The Empire had always prided itself on its ability to adapt and survive, but this was different. Humanity had struck with an intensity and resilience the Empire had never known, and now the galaxy itself seemed to be slipping from their grasp. Commander Roland sat in his quarters, staring at the map of the galaxy. The lines representing the Empire's territory were shrinking rapidly. He felt a deep sense of dread. This wasn't just a military defeat. This was the fall of an empire, the once proud empire, whose legions had conquered entire civilizations, now faced extinction at the hands of a single species. "We're running out of options, Commander," Captain Vera said, her voice grim. "The humans are relentless. Their forces just keep growing. We have to make a choice. Either we surrender, or we make one last stand." Roland glanced up at her, his face tired and hollow. "Surrender," he repeated. The word felt foreign on his tongue. The Empire had never surrendered, never backed down. But the humans weren't like any enemy the Empire had faced. They didn't fight to lose. They fought to win. And now the Empire was in the position of needing to make that same difficult decision. "If we don't surrender, we're finished," Captain Vera said. Her expression hardened. "If we continue this fight, we'll lose every fleet, every soldier. The humans won't stop. We'll be wiped out completely." The idea of surrender was a bitter pill for Roland to swallow. The Empire had never accepted defeat, not even when it seemed inevitable. But humanity's war against them was no longer just a fight for survival. It had become a fight for something greater, a fight for freedom, for their future. And it was clear that the Empire, with all its technology and power, was not prepared to face that kind of force. For the first time in Roland's long career, he felt a deep, consuming fear, not of losing a battle, but of losing the war, and with it, everything the Empire had built. His legacy would be one of failure, his name etched into history as the commander who watched his entire empire fall to a single determined species. It was a thought that haunted him in his sleepless nights. "Do you think they'll show mercy?" Roland asked quietly, his voice almost a whisper. Vyra hesitated, her eyes softening with sympathy. "I don't know, Commander. But if we keep fighting, we'll give them no choice but to destroy us." The fleet was now in full retreat, their remaining ships heading toward the distant outer systems in a last-ditch effort to escape. But Roland knew it wouldn't matter. The humans were relentless. They wouldn't stop until the Empire was gone. There was nowhere left to run. "Prepare a message to the humans," Roland said, his voice heavy. "We need to make contact. It's time to surrender." The officers in the room exchanged uncertain glances. Surrender was unheard of. The Empire had crushed countless civilizations. The idea of asking for mercy from a species they had once believed to be weak felt wrong, like an insult to everything they had ever stood for. But the reality was undeniable. The Empire's time was over. And now, Roland had to decide what was left for him. Was there any hope of saving the Empire from complete annihilation, or was it time to accept their fate? The final showdown. The day the Empire had feared was now upon them. After countless defeats, desperate retreats, and failed attempts to outmaneuver the humans, Commander Roland made the only decision left: surrender. The message was sent, a plea for mercy, asking for terms of peace. But the humans, relentless as ever, didn't offer them a way out. They had not fought for this long only to let the Empire escape without facing the full consequences of their actions. There would be no simple surrender. There would be no easy peace. The humans had learned, over the course of this war, what the Empire was truly capable of. And they were not about to let the Empire slip away without paying the price for its arrogance. As Roland's flagship moved into the outer systems, hoping to avoid capture, he knew it was only a matter of time before the humans caught up. They were too determined, too skilled, and too powerful. No fleet, no matter how large or how advanced, could outrun the human will to survive. They were coming for him, and they wouldn't stop until the Empire was completely wiped from existence. Then, in a flash, the final battle began. Human ships, sleek and fast, appeared on the radar, surrounding the Imperial fleet on all sides. The Empire's remaining warships, already damaged and depleted, were no match for the human forces that had adapted so quickly to their tactics. It was no longer about winning. It was about making sure the Empire would never again threaten their world, their people, or anyone else in the galaxy. Roland stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as the humans closed in. His hand shook as he gripped the armrests of his chair. It was over. There was no escaping this time. The humans had come for them. And they would fight until every last Imperial ship was destroyed. "Commander," one of his officers said, his voice trained with panic, "the humans are closing in. Their weapons are charged, and they're targeting our engines." Roland looked out at the stars, his thoughts dark and heavy. It was clear now. There would be no mercy. Humanity had already proven their power. They had already sent their message to the galaxy. The Empire would no longer rule. The time for domination had ended. The first shot from the human fleet struck their flagship. The impact was sudden and violent, causing the ship to shudder and buckle. Roland felt his chest tighten as he struggled to maintain control, but the ship's systems were failing. The Empire's advanced shields, once thought invincible, flickered and sparked before completely collapsing. The humans had finally found the weakness, and now they were exploiting it with brutal efficiency. "Prepare for evacuation," Roland shouted, though he knew it was too late. The humans had already disabled the escape pods, leaving the crew with no way out. As explosions rocked the flagship, Roland felt an overwhelming sense of defeat. He had fought so hard for the Empire, believing that their power and technology would never fail. But in the end, it was the human spirit, their determination, that had brought it all down. The humans had won, not because they were stronger, but because they had the will to fight until the very end. The final blow came swiftly. A coordinated strike from the human ships hit the flagship's reactor core, sending it into a catastrophic meltdown. The entire ship erupted in a blinding flash of light, the shockwave rippling through space, destroying everything in its path. And just like that, the Empire, the once mighty, unshakable Empire, was no more. As the debris from the shattered flagship floated in the vacuum of space, humanity stood victorious. The war was over. The message had been received. The Empire had learned to fear humanity, not because of their weapons, but because of their unbreakable resolve. The human fleets, battered but unbeaten, turned their attention to the future. They would rebuild their world, their civilizations, and their forces, and they would ensure that no one would ever again try to conquer them. The Empire had been their greatest challenge, but humanity had proven that no force in the galaxy could match their courage, their resilience, and their will to survive. The message humanity sent out echoed through the stars. The Empire learned to fear humanity. Let this be a warning to all who think they can conquer us.